Falsity is irritating the eyes of integrity. A quotation representing the topic we are going to analyze and discuss for you. Good day everyone, mabuhay! My name is Ashlee Karyle G. Flores from Group 2, and for today's presentation, we are going to unveil the truth of Cavite Mutiny. Are the GOMBURZA executed because they lead the rebellion? Or not? This question will be answered in two perspectives shortly. A two-phase of Cavite Mutiny will be presented into two parts, and we hope that this could bring enlightenment about the topic. So without further ado, let's start.
Identifying sources. The Cavite Mutiny toward a definite history by John N. Schumacher discusses the 1872 revolt in Cavite, extensive accounts with the government and the involvement of the three-piece GOMBURZA in the revolution. In conclusion, this is a secondary source. The chosen source or article entitled as a Cavite Mutiny toward a definitive history is written by John N. Schumacher, one of the most prominent historians in the Philippines, who taught within the Ateneo de Manila University Department of History for 12 years. Schumacher served as editor-in-chief in the Philippine Studies. The article was published by the Ateneo de Manila University Press in March 2011. The supported claims and evidence in the article were derived from scholarly textbooks, journal articles, and commentaries of the people involved. Moreover, the author included literary criticism and evaluations in the article. He included a primary source, which are the documents written by Governor General Rafael Izquierdo to the Spanish King. And he also used other secondary sources, such as the accounts of Artigas E. Corva, Antonio Regidor, Montero E. Vidal, and Pardo Tavera. Therefore, the article is reliable and authentic.
Reverend John N. Schumacher, S.J., wrote the article, The Cavite Mutiny, Toward a Definitive History, Volume 59, Number 1, pages 55 to 81. Schumacher is a Filipino historian and professor, one of the most prominent in the Philippines. He taught in Ateneo de Manila University, Department of History for 12 years. And he was also a driving force at Loyola School of Theology, dedicating over 40 years of service to provide accounts of church history. The volume article was published in March 2011 under the publishing firm of Ateneo de Manila University Press. Author Schumacher has a passion for theology and history. As an ordained priest himself, his educational background includes philosophical studies at the Sacred Heart Novitiate and a degree in theology at Woodstock College in the U.S. It was from Georgetown University where he received his doctorate. He has been studying and writing history for a long time. To further establish the validity of the author, he previously wrote a book entitled Father Jose Burgos, a documentary history and their translation in 1999. In this book, he took a closer view of Burgos' writing and delivered comprehensive documentation about the political developments of that era. Upon verifying with an article of similar nature from the official government agency that commemorates and cultivates Philippine history, the National Historical Commission of the Philippines. Two phases of the Cavite Mutiny, as the article was called, discussed in detail the events through the lenses of the Spaniards, which are consistent with author Schumacher's account of the story. By reading the text given by the author, it forms a coherent and logical pattern that makes the account highly probable. As for biases, it is possible, since the author is a secondary source himself. He may have added elements and interpretations here and there. However, it is safe to say that it is insufficient to change the prevailing story, because upon fact-checking with other similar accounts, the overall narrative remains intact.
Now, for the content analysis, the Cavite Mutiny Toward a Definitive History is a written, English, online article that presents an account of the mutiny from the perspective of Governor General Rafael de Izquierdo. The majority of the words and sentences in the article are simple to understand, but since the Cavite Mutiny, which is the subject of the article, occurred way back in 1872, there are a few terms that are pertinent from that time in history that are difficult to understand today and will require you to search for its definition. Well, aside from contributing to the existing accounts about the Cavite Mutiny, this article was written in hopes of reaching every Filipino, especially the students, researchers, historians, and academics, as this is a relevant part of Philippine history. To finally discuss, the article contains the following points. On January 19, 1872, Izquierdo received an anonymous letter stating that there was a revolt planned for that night or the next, which was led by Father Burgos. A list of priests who were said to rebel against Spain reached Izquierdo, all of which opposed to Spain since 1869, highlighting Burgos, Zamora, Guevara, Mendoza, Mariano Gomez, Mariano Sibilia, and Miguel de Laza, who are all part of a Filipino clergy. Some would receive death penalty, while others would be punished by expulsion to the Marianas. According to Sergeant Bonifacio Octavo's statement, Burgos led the movement and was helped by Zamora. Gomez, who was also known to be an anti-Espanol, assisted the 500 men at Bacoor who failed to join the insurgents at Fort San Felipe. Additionally, Gomez was also named in an anonymous letter sent to Izquierdo. This led to naming the three priests, Gomez, Burgos, Zamora, as the major instigators of the revolt and thus being executed, while the rest of the priests on the list were either sentenced to Marianas, implicated, arrested, or eventually just vanished. Hence, this article reveals how the three Filipino Catholic priests, namely Mariano Gomez, Jose Burgos, and Jacinto Zamora, otherwise known as GOMBURZA, were accused of leading the Cavite Mutiny in the perspective of the Spanish authorities.
The article entitled The Cavite Mutiny Toward a Definitive History is written by Reverend John N. Schumacher, S.J. and was published in the year 2011 during the period of presidency of Benigno Aquino III, a year that started the impeachment of many government officials who wasted the country's resources has been done, and the start of Aquino's campaign with the tagline, Kung walang corrupt, walang mahirap. Reverend John N. Schumacher is known as one of the most prominent historians of the Philippines. He also taught at the Ateneo de Manila University, Department of History for 12 years. Because of his admiration for Rizal, he pursued doctorate at Georgetown University. Additionally, Reverend John N. Schumacher devoted 40 years to imparting church history, and he wrote books that tackle Philippine church history and also the nationalist movement during the period of Spanish colonization. Father Schumacher intends to inform the present generation of the new data that was accumulated from Spain regarding the rebellion that happened in Cavite, one of the most important events in the Philippine history, and its recorded information cannot be found. The article of Father Schumacher is a vital piece of information. The article entitled The Cavite Mutiny Toward a Definitive History is important because it gives information about the rebellion from a Spanish point of view, and it shows the pieces of evidence that indicates the GOMBURZA's verdict, which is execution. The execution, which ignited the Filipinos' desire to fight for their freedom from the Spaniards, and the start of Philippine national movement.
The article entitled The Cavite Mutiny Toward a Definitive History has allowed its readers, including the members of our group, to see the different events in relation to the Cavite Mutiny story. Being published in 2011, and with the numerous existing articles that have used it as a reference, it is safe to say that there have been a number of people, particularly students, who have already read it and inferred things from it. Mainly, its relevance to the current Filipino generation lies in the realizations of those who read it. Due to the article's exhaustiveness, The information contained within it is helpful in assessing what people think is the truth. However, there will always be questions. People would be unsure of what to believe, especially with the question of accuracy. With today's state in the Philippines, where fake news, misinformation, or disinformation are extremely evident, reading this article is beneficial for people to be more critical when choosing sides. It tests analytical skills as each detail is really connected and scrutinized. This may not be a big deal to others, but it actually is. People, Filipinos whose ears tend to be closed as they refuse to hear more details about things, are the ones most prone to fake news. Moreover, the article provided a possibility for a better appreciation of the Philippines by its citizens. It demonstrated the complexity of events at that time, as well as how difficult life was for Filipinos back then. Although uncertain, it allows readers, particularly Filipinos, to appreciate the freedom they are experiencing today. It helps shape nationalism as they realize the contribution of certain events in the past to the nation they are living in today. They would consider doing more things to make them assets in the country and help its development. Just like Dr. Jose Rizal, who wrote El Filibusterismo after his realizations in relation to the Cavite Mutiny event, which then awoke the Filipinos about the issues that time. And, just like our group, who realized we should indeed study hard to graduate and contribute to the country in the future. Ultimately, as said in an article by Amy J. Kaw in 2020, memories of the past shape the behavior of today. To understand or change our behavior, we have to understand our memories.
With regards to the type of source, the book of Onofre de Cruz entitled The Roots of the Filipino Nation, which is a secondary source, was used, and also the citation indicated. Corpus Onofre, A Mutiny and the Terror of 1872, The Roots of the Filipino Nation, Quezon City, UP Press, Print 30 Division, 2006, pages 20 to 45. And now, this is our external criticism. Cavite Mutiny is the one of the historical events in the Philippine history, and this event was highlighted and comprehensively discussed by Dr. Onofre de Cruz, a historian, professor, and economist in his book entitled The Roots of the Filipino Nation, Volume 2. It was first published in 1989 by Aklahi Foundation, Incorporated in Quezon City and reprinted in 2006 by UP Press, Printery Division in the same place. The book used was 2006 edition with no foregoing publication, and its type of paper corroborated that it was indeed a new edition as examined on its smooth texture and clean white color of the paper. Torn pages nor dents found in the book. The font as well complement the 21st century style of writing, as it is simple but academically professional. Although there's some Spanish terminologies, but the overall language used is English, and in which discussion of Cavite Mutiny was effectively observed. Lastly, the book has a mark of LPU Laguna JPL Multimedia Resource Center as possession, and it is found in the said library in the Filipiniana section. With that, upon carefully examination of its physical characteristic, we can say that the source is authentic.
In our criticism, the source is a credible source because it has a credible author who studied political science and was knowledgeable in the field of history, politics, and economics. Onofre de Corpus was a Filipino economist and historian. He graduated from college with a bachelor's degree in arts from the University of the Philippines. He acquired a Master of Arts and a Doctor of Philosophy in Political Science from the University of Illinois, USA, and Harvard University, USA, respectively. He was the former Secretary of Education of the Philippines from 1968 to 1971 and became the President of the University of the Philippines System from 1975 to 1979. The Chosen Source was published in 1989 by Aclahe Foundation Incorporation in Quezon City, Philippines. It was published more than 10 decades later after the Cavite Mutiny and Spanish colonialism happened. The author uses many reliable references to convey the events and ideas discussed in the book and to justify his claims, which makes the book a reliable source. It is also written for those who seek knowledge and enlightenment about the nature of our society and politics in the present. The author uses academic English, which is a formal style of writing in universities that can be easily understood by the majority. That is why it is able to reach its target audience. There is evidence of bias in the chosen source, but not to the extent that it becomes subjective. The author of the chosen source is a Filipino journalist and historian, so he is likely to sympathize with his fellow Filipinos who experienced terror during Spanish colonialism, which we can tell by the way he narrates the events that happened and the way he expresses his thoughts on them. Another point is that it is published by a Philippine-based publishing company that is recognized by the Department of Education in the Philippines. For our content analysis, we used qualitative content analysis to analyze and interpret the content of our chosen source. Using the codes present in the first row and the first column, we are able to know what concept can be defined by these codes. So as you can see in the second column and the first row, based on the codes, the concept is about the hostile policies of the Spaniards towards the native or Filipino clergy. Going on to the second column and the second row, as you can see, the concept based on the codes present in the first column and the second row, it is about the Spaniards' reasons for killing the 3 Filipino priests. Now, to identify another concept, to easily know the theme or what the source is all about, we categorize the 2 aforementioned subcategories or subunits. So, the hostile policies of the Spaniards towards the Filipino clergy and the Spaniards' reasons for killing the 3 Filipino priests can both define the concept about the Spaniards' conflict against the Filipino priests, which you can see in the third column of the first and the second row. Now, the concept of the codes present in the first column and the fourth row is about the basis on why the allegations against the 3 martyrs were untrue. Again, we categorize the 2 aforementioned subunits to identify another concept. So, the 2 recently mentioned subunits defined the concept about the reasons why the 3 martyrs were believed to be mistakenly accused but intentionally executed. Next, we were also able to identify the concept of the codes present in the first column and the third row, which are about the unlawful and unjust treatment of the colonial regime to the 3 martyrs. Lastly, for the important part of our content analysis, we were able to identify what the chosen source is all about when we categorize the 2 categories that we have come up with. So the main idea or the theme of the chosen source is all about the suppression of the Filipino clergy during the Spanish regime.
Contextual Analysis. The Roots of the Filipino Nation is a book first published during the administration of former President Corazon Aquino. It was in 1989 when Aclahe Foundation Incorporated in Quezon City printed the book in its first edition. During those time, the quest for discovery of the Philippine history have already started with the contributions by historians like Teodoro Agoncillo, Nick Joaquin, Luwalhati Bautista, and many more. But Dr. Onofre D. Corpus made sure to also make his own contribution in the field. O.D. Corpus is a Filipino academic, historian, and economist who is known for his major contributions to the field of political science as well as to the Philippine social economic history. He has AB degree, magna cum laude in the University of the Philippines, Diliman, MA from University of Illinois, MPA and PhD in Political Economics and Governance in Harvard University, and honoris causa in Royal Chulalongkorn University. Some of his other works include An Economic History of the Philippines, 1997, Saga and Triumph, The Filipino Revolution Against Spain, 1999, and many more. The year 2006 were the same year the reprinting of the book was marked by the intense rivalries among the country's elites and a renewed campaign against communists. Former President Gloria Macapagal Arroyo was attempted to be ousted in her position of presidency. But the economy seemed insulated from those political uncertainty, posting high growth because of rising exports, receipts, more foreign investments, and record remittances from overseas workers. Karyle 2007. On the other hand, 89.5% of the Filipino population are Roman Catholic at the time of publication, a factor we are looking at simply because the book contained contents pertaining to Roman Catholicism during Spanish colonization. It could be that the author wanted the readers at that time to be aware how the situation of Catholicism in our country back then and how the Filipino priests were mistreated or discriminated. In his book, particularly on the topic A Mutiny and Terror of 1872, he supplies comprehensive interpretation and discussion of Cavite Mutiny. For his general perspective, we need a nationalistic leader, one who passionately loves the country and wholeheartedly devoted to serving its citizens. He also put emphasis on the development of Filippinism, national identity, national pride, and national unity, which suggests that he is not simply interpreting the past events in the Philippines, but he wants his readers to digest what had happened in the past and gain nationalistic passion of one's country as well. Particularly, the author writes and undergo to the quest for knowledge about Cavite Mutiny to pave the way for deeper understanding of the events of Cavite Revolution and martyrdom of GOMBURZA, which of course will clarify our dim knowledge and implicates the significance of the past and its connection to us, to our generation.
So for the consequences, in this article, it is believed that the Gumburza are not really the rebellion leaders. Because of this event, Jose Rizal was inspired to write his novels, El Filibusterismo and Noli Me Tangere, that criticizes how the Spaniards ruled during their colonization and exposed the ills of the Philippine society during that time. These writings ignited the hearts of the Filipinos that indirectly lit up the spark to start the Philippine Revolution. In the present generation, the article written by O.D. Cruz about Gumburza is still in the minds of the Filipino citizens, especially to those who reads it. Although they did not die fighting for a cause, but they championed. This article serves as a memoir that even though we could not physically see evidence for the truth about Cavite Mutiny, but we have a source to rely on, comprehensively discussed and analyzed. The content read on this book inspired the present generation to continue the legacy of freedom, and it serves as a reminder that there might be a tendency to repeat the history. But we as enlightened individuals, through the article A Mutiny and Terror of 1872, we learned from history. Thus we will continue living with it and preventing it to happen again. The dark past should be remembered and the present are now aware of it.
Conclusion. After careful analysis and examination of the articles about Cavite Mutiny, whether or not GOMBURZA was executed because they are leader of rebellion, the group agreed that GOMBURZA was not the leader of revolt. Thus, they were falsely accused of sedition, leading for their martyrdom. The first source of article provides information supporting that Father Gomez, Father Burgos and Father Zamora are the leaders in the uprising against Spaniards. Such of that is the letter received by General Rafael de Escudero stating the list of priests who rebel against the Spaniards, and also Sergeant Bonifacio Octavo's testimony takes side against the priest, stating that it was Father Burgos who led the movement and was assisted by Father Gomez and Father Zamora. However, it intends to be untrue since there was insufficient evidence to support those accusations and pure conspiracy can only be made. Suspicion for the scheme against Spain by GOMBURZA is not admissible as evidence, and Sergeant Octavo is inconsistent with his statements, and obviously coached by someone on what to say. It was the Spanish priest doing, condemning the Filipino priest simply because they do not like the idea of the Filipinos having high position in the church. Their enemy was assigned as the defense counsel, making them sign a pledge of fidelity and adherence and later on used as seditious manifesto, all of which is discussed in the second article entitled A Mutiny and Terror of 1872, supporting the proposition that GOMBURZA is not the one who led the revolt. The second source is more authentic and valid, which is the book The Roots of the Filipino Nation, as we refer not only to its physical attributes, but also to its content and internal characteristics. Its content and the context when it was written, it's coherent and clear to its message and purpose it intends to communicate, all of which are connected and lead to one conclusion to conclude that GOMBURZA was executed not because they led the Cavite revolt, but instead they were killed of false accusation. Never has any positive proof ever been produced. Spaniards' intention to instill fear among the Filipino people to never do such daring act again actually ignited their inflamed emotions as they reminisced the unjust execution of their three beloved friars. That's why up until today, their that anniversary is still commemorated, that even if they did not fight for Philippine independence, but they championed, and that cause inspired our ancestors to fight for independence that we are having now at the present. That's all for our presentation. I hope that you learned something in our analysis and interpretation about Cavite Mutiny. That's all. Thank you for watching.